I have literally... Oh wait, no, wrong book. Okay. Hi and welcome back to my channel. I've been wanting to do this little series of videos where I'm going to be reading 3 books of a different genre each time. So the first one that I want to do this week, I say week as if I'm going to manage to read 3 books in 1 week, but potentially this week / the next 2 weeks, is going to be historical romances. I've read my fair share of paranormal romances, and in general I read more books that are focused on the plot and the story and the characters than solely the romance, but I do love a book that has a little bit of romance in it. But what I would say is that I've never really read historical romances, and that is a genre that seems to be booming at the moment. I keep seeing videos by Chandler Ainsley, whose channel I love. I've seen videos by Peace Love Books XO, and basically both her and Chandler Ainsley have been doing lots of little videos where they're talking about recommendations for people who are new to the genre. However, I tend to only want to read a book if the summary is something that really gets me into it. So I've kind of done my own research, and I also just didn't really want to start this and buy a bunch of books if I didn't know I was generally going to enjoy them. So originally I bought a couple on Kindle because they were like £2 each, which is so cheap. So it was like, I'm gonna start with books that are really cheap, but the summary does look fun and sounds like something I would enjoy. And then if I feel like I'm gonna enjoy this and I'm gonna want to do this video, then I'm gonna buy the physical books, get them delivered, and do this. I couldn't help myself but start on Kindle one of the 2 books, and I've already read 100 pages of it, and I'm just, yeah, I'm already enjoying this, I'm already really liking this, so I wanted to talk about it and do this now. So the first book that I'm reading is The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. So Tessa Dare is apparently one of the big names in the genre. I, again, don't know much about the genre. I've never read historical romances before, so I'm gonna try and read some bigger names, some names that a lot of people vouch for and say are the best ones in the genre and are really famous in it, so that I can make myself an idea of the overall genre. I feel like it's gonna make more sense than to pick a random one that might be really bad and doesn't have any reviews and no one knows the author. I'd rather just start with the big names, and then if I like it and I want to continue read into the genre, then discover other people who write in it. The second book that I wanted to pick is also by a big name. It's A Rogue by Any Other Name by Sarah MacLean. And then the third book I haven't decided yet. I'm gonna finish the first one, I think, first, decide what I want to go on next, which book I want to read next, and then pick a third book so that I have 3 books for this video. So the first book that I'm reading is The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare, and it's basically a story about this lady who is considered a spinster for the time because she's already 26 and she's still not married, and she lives in London, so she lives in town, and she's the only one who's still in the family house in town. Her brother lives in Cumberland and her parents are in India or something like that. And she is passionate about helping animals, so she just loves to take care of cute pets and animals. And I don't really mean pets, I mean the animals that have been left behind, that are, you know, have a broken leg, or the hens that weren't, you know, regularly on schedule for giving eggs or whatever, that kind of stuff. So it's completely random. She's got a bunch of animals that doesn't sound realistic at all. So otters and a steer and a goat, I think, a bunch of things like that. So that's the main character, and she meets her new neighbor, Gabriel Duke, I think, who has just moved into the house next door, and he is someone who rose to wealth by his own means, so he's not from the same society as her. He was born with pretty much nothing, and he is just a ruthless businessman who is able to turn anything into money and ruins other people's wealth or whatever, from what I understand. So he's got like quite the bad boy reputation in terms of businessman money stuff. And he moves next door and she meets him accidentally, and obviously he's very handsome, and she immediately realizes that even though she's always been a romantic at heart and that's the main thing that counts for her, she realizes she might be in lust with him. from the start, I have a feeling this is going to have some smut scenes, that it is going to be more of a sexy book, which I know for some people might not be the perfect way into the genre. So far, I feel like the writing is really light-hearted, very fast-paced. It's not too prosy, it's not too purple prose style at all. I don't really know what I expected. I didn't really know whether the genre was like very easy and fast-paced or more of the old school purple prose style because it's historical romance. I guess maybe in my mind I was thinking that, but nope, not at all. And I'm really enjoying it because I can feel that I'm already going to finish one of these books in like one day probably. It's going to go so fast. Apart from the writing style, I feel like the author has a lot of humor, and I really enjoy the banter and the humor in the book. There's so many ridiculous scenes and like the humor is really prevalent in them, and I'm really enjoying that as well. Like at the very beginning, Gabriel Duke is struggling with the repairs in the new house that he's trying to transform into a fixer-upper basically so that he can sell it for a higher price. Oh yeah, because part of the story is that he thinks that having a lady next door, who is Penelope, the main character, is a big selling point for the house. So he's trying to make the house into this perfect beautiful townhouse so that people can buy it thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna live next door to a lady, and that's like a big sell point. The only thing is, and that's what happens at the beginning of the book, that's like the big, apart from the romance aspect and the fact that she meets him and she's in lust with him, whatever, apart from that, the main story plot line, let's say, is the fact that her brother is now saying, well, you're gonna now live your whole life as a spinster because you still haven't found anyone, you don't go into society, you're not proving that you want to get out there and find a husband, so you're gonna come live with me in Cumberland. She really doesn't want to do that. Also, it would mean abandoning her pets. And her aunt comes over to visit and tell her this news, and she convinces her aunt to give her some time, like a month or something, to figure this out. And her aunt says, well, if you can buy a whole new wardrobe and be more fashionable, go out in society to like balls or whatever, and get rid of all your pets within the month, then I will have your back and tell your brother not to do that. So that's kind of the beginning and point of the story, is she needs to find new homes for her animals, and loving homes, not just anything. And at the same time, her new neighbour, Gabriel Duke, decides to help her because he wants to sell the house that he's in with the premise of it's next door to a beautiful lady. But he says it's not really going to sell that much if she's, you know, out in the garden feeding a goat. That's just too weird for people. So he wants to help her rehome all the animals as well. And so they're going to spend a lot of time together, and it seems to be a dangerous situation for the both of them because they're terribly attracted to each other. Already I'm loving the fact that the attraction is very visible. I don't really like a book where you only get the point of view of the female character and that she's just not really aware of what's going on, and she's like, oh, I don't know whether he likes me too, and he acts a bit like an asshole. Stuff like that is just not my vibe, and I feel like this book is the opposite of that. Even though he's meant to be a bad boy, it's so obvious that he already fancies her. I really like the humor so far. It's just the perfect light read. And the banter between the two characters just follows suit. It's really funny to see the two characters interact between each other and have that kind of silly banter with each other, and you can really tell there is chemistry. That is the main thing, is like so far there's a lot of chemistry between the characters. I'm only 100 pages in, there's already a few hotter scenes, but it's literally just kissing, and I can tell that there's definitely going to be some smut in it at some point. So yeah, so far I'm enjoying the book. I think I'm gonna report back when I get towards the end, or maybe after I finish the book, and just letting you know how I feel about it, and then get on to the next read. See you guys later. I wanted to give an update on The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare because I've literally finished the book. I really enjoyed it and gave it around 4 stars, I believe, because I wouldn't give it up to 5 stars. I feel like it was maybe a little bit too light, and there were a couple of issues I had with the book that don't really deserve the full 5 stars. But overall, it was really enjoyable and I just had fun reading it. So I do think that 4 stars is an accurate representation of how I feel about the book. Things I really liked about the book. So first of all, I feel like the main character is very independent and very outspoken in a way that you don't really expect a lot of strong female characters to be, just because she is way more feminine and delicate, and she loves animals, and she's quite shy, and she doesn't really mingle in society and what they call the ton, so with other ladies and everything. But that doesn't make her not a strong character, and I love the fact that Tessa Dare wrote her really well to show us that you can be all of those things and strong. And the way she is that she just speaks her mind very often. She doesn't let Gabriel Duke intimidate her or anything like that, and she feels particularly honest, and she doesn't really hide her feelings, and I really enjoyed her honesty, especially in their relationship. Like, it feels like plenty of times there's moments where he's, you know, trying to tease her and be like, oh, you like that, or you feel great about this, and you're trying to lie about it. And she's like, no, I'm not trying to lie. I admit it straight away, I do like it. And it's just like refreshingly honest. So I really like that about her. There's a couple of characters that I really disliked in the book, and again I would say that she's done a really good job of making those characters detestable, so I'm quite happy with how I felt about that. And there is also a couple of twists and turns in the story that I didn't expect, because at some point I was reading most of it on my Kindle and I was seeing the percentage I was in, and I was like, well, I'm about 80% in, they're probably just gonna get married now and everything's happy and this is the end, right? And no, there were like a couple more twists to happen. And the other thing that's really good about the book is that it generally made me want to read the previous two in the series, because although they aren't necessary to understand what's happening here at all, like this is an individual story about Penny, you have moments where she's talking to her two of her friends that have clearly recently been matched or something, and you kind of guess that, oh, there must be books about these two. And then I looked it up and I was like, yeah, this is book number 3, which I didn't even know in the series, and there's 2 books before that. And seeing the characters that were just like fun to read about and that were really great friends to her and all of that, you kind of want a little bit more to be able to read their stories and their love stories previous to this one. So Tessa Dare does a good job of making me want to read more of her books, which is quite good. And the one last thing I want to say about this book is I really enjoyed how satisfying the ending was. I feel like everything was tied into nice, neat little knots, like everything was perfectly finished, and the way that the main character, Penny, overcomes the issues that she's had in the past and the way that she deals with them at the end was really satisfying, and yet still quite felt true to her vulnerability as well. Like, she was strong while being vulnerable, and I love that for her, and it's just, that was the perfect ending for me. And I think I'm definitely gonna want to read some more books by her. The next book I'm gonna read for this is A Rogue by Any Other Name by Sarah MacLean. So this is the next book I've got for this little mini series of 3 historical romances. I still haven't decided what I'm going to read for book number 3, but I'm going to look it up while I'm reading this book. I will let you guys know once I've started reading, once I'm about 100 pages in or so, how I feel about the book and whether I like it as much as The Wallflower Wager. See you guys later. I've now started A Rogue by Any Other Name by Sarah MacLean, and I'm about 90-ish pages in. So far, I'm not loving it. It's not that it's badly written. Actually, I do think that's the one main thing I do like about it, is that it is very well written. If anything, I almost feel like it's more complex. The vocabulary and everything, the sentences, everything about the way it's written, the stylistic behind it is a little bit more complex and a little bit more rich. It feels like a little bit less of a light read. The story starts with Michael Bourne, who is the son of a lord, and his dad died and left everything to his best friend, who, as a friend of the family, took care of bringing up Michael and the estates and everything. However, at the very beginning, it happens around 10 years before the main events of the book, we have this scene where Michael is betting all of his assets, like everything he owns, including his estate, and which was his dad's estate, Falconwell Manor or something like that. He's betting everything into a game and he's losing, and then you can see that he's got a problem with gambling and everything, and that he loses everything. To whom? to his dad's friend, the guy who's been raising him and that he now says is absolutely not a friend of the family and just really wanted everything for himself. I think his name is Langford. So you can see him losing everything to this Langford guy, and then you just have like a bunch of people surrounding him in this gambling scene, you know, gossiping and being like, oh my god, he lost everything, he's, you know, fallen from grace, blah blah blah, to the point where it's not just his estate and all of his assets, it's basically pretty much his title, like what he is as a person, part of the ton or whatever they call it, you know, like the lords and ladies and everything. Like he's just out of that society from that moment on. And then years later, around 10 years after that, you see him running a gambling place with two friends called the Angel, as a reference to Lucifer, the fallen angel, and they're way richer than he was even before he lost everything, and he's got about double the money and everything, and he's ruthless and he's kind of doing to other people what was done to him. And then one of his partners in his business tells him that he's finally heard something about Langford, so the guy who stole everything from him. And when he's saying that, he's like, oh my god, what, is the land available? And you kind of have a little bit of feedback about the fact that he's been trying to get his land back and has been desperate about it, and that Langford wouldn't sell it, not even for way more than what it was worth. Suddenly he learns that Langford ironically lost it to a card of games to his neighbour, and that the land is now attached to a special someone. Basically, the land is now part of the dowry of the neighbour's daughter, Penelope, who is our main character here. So Penelope is 28 and is still a spinster, as they call it, and she's basically had an engagement that broke off at some point because the guy was really in love with someone else, and she doesn't resent him, but everyone in her family resents her for it because it's always the woman's fault, blah blah blah. And the fact that this has happened has tainted her reputation in a way that is affecting her sisters and her sisters' marriage prospects as well. And then she's told by her dad that she's going to get a bunch of proposals from now on because he's attached that land and estate to her dowry. And indeed, there's already a bunch of gentlemen from London who want to marry her, mostly just because they want the place and the money and the status, blah blah. Then she's walking around at night towards that estate that belonged to Bourne, just kind of walking around to have a think or something. That's when she meets him, and he's just arrived at the manor or whatever, and he tells her that he's going to kidnap her and like lock her in the house, although he refuses to call it kidnapping, but that's very much exactly what he's doing, that she's not allowed to leave the manor until the day after, and he even rips her clothes a little bit. She's really confused, but basically he's explaining, I'm gonna make you marry me so that I can have my estate back, and the reason why you're not gonna have a choice and you're gonna have to marry me and no one's gonna have a choice in the matter is because after you're gonna come out and you won't have been home the entire night and you will come back with your dress ripped. Everyone will believe that I have ruined you, and therefore there's no choice but for me to marry you. Basically the reason I am not loving this book so far is because you do have these two parts of the chapters each time where you have a little bit of the point of view of Penelope and then a little bit of the point of view of Michael, and I do like that in general in books, but the problem is every time you have her point of view, however he's acting is extremely cold and mean, and just he's such a bully. He calls her an aging spinster and that no one wants to marry her, that she doesn't have a choice. He basically treats her like shit, and like even the fact that he's ripping her dress and everything and kidnapping her and forcing her to stay here, she's very much so yet another man who's taking a choice away from me, great. And it's just such a horrifying feeling when you read it that I'm just not loving that part at all. I just can't find him romantic or attractive because of it. And then you have this passage very early on, because I'm only a quarter of the book in and they're already kissing and there's already some smut happening, and I'm just like, where's the building up? There's like absolutely no build up to this, and although it's well written and sexy, you could just read it on its own and be like, oh, this is nice, but binding it into the whole context and putting it into this context of him being a dick to her, it kind of feels like unattractive and a huge turn off, and I'm just like, I can't enjoy these scenes. So that's kind of the reason I don't like it. I do like the fact that there's all of these chapters and scenes are interspersed with small little letters that were written in the past, and you see the dates clearly from one to another, because technically, since they were neighbors, they were friends when they were children, and they wrote each other these letters while he was at Eton College and she was at home using a governess to learn. And it's really cute and it's really adorable, and you get a real good feel for their friendship, and I really like that friendship. And I would have loved the fact that he would just be like, oh my god, here's the friend I've lost and let's catch up, instead of being such a dickhead to her. I just feel like, oh, there's not enough pining on her part. Like, whenever you get into his chapters, you suddenly get the feeling that, yeah, he does find her attractive and he's trying to fight it a bit and everything. The stuff that I'm really looking for. But because she's not getting that feeling at all, it's just one-sided almost. And it feels like whenever I read from her chapters, it feels so awful that I don't care that those other parts from his point of view are giving me that. It's almost not enough, basically. We're probably never gonna get like an apology from him, and she's so letting it happen. Like, she's happy for him to make her experience pleasure and stuff and feel like that, when literally the minute before he pretty much told her she was an aging spinster. And it's just like, dude, no, aspire to more, please. You deserve better than that. You shouldn't just want to have sex with some guy who just told you you were ugly, basically. I'm probably gonna catch up with you guys when I'm a little bit further in, and I will just let you know how I feel about it and whether I feel any better about this book. I'm currently still reading A Rogue by Any Other Name, and I've just reached page 270, so I'm edging towards the end. I still have about 100 pages or so left, and that's about it. So how do I feel about it now? What's changed? Quite a lot, because currently I'm actually really liking the book. Not so much because I like the male interest any more than I did before. There's been a few passages where you have his direct point of view. Well, it's not direct, it's, you know, third person, but it's from his point of view. And whenever you do feel like he's slowly, you know, chipping away at his demeanor, whatever. Like, he's slowly becoming more and more warm and caring towards Penelope, and you can feel that, and you can tell that she's slowly breaking him down, which is interesting, but I don't really care for it. I still think that the way he's treated her, as much as he doesn't realize that he's the fault of it, is a little bit abusive, because a lot of it is her feeling completely worthless in his presence, and that sounds to me like emotional abuse, which I'm not there for. So I'm exaggerating, maybe I'm pushing it a bit too far, but that's how I feel about the romance, and I'm just not raving for it. I don't love it. However, I do like Penelope's character more and more, and she's becoming stronger and stronger and independent, and just like someone who's fighting for her cause and for herself, and just fighting back in general and biting back, and she's got quite a bite actually, so I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the passages where she's, you know, telling him off or responding in a way he doesn't expect, or yeah, at some point she decides to go and visit his gambling hell without telling him because she's upset at something he said or whatever, and it's kind of like her small rebellion and her small way of fighting back, and when she does, it's a great scene and I'm really enjoying it. I do think that, as I did praise the writing style at the beginning, even when I didn't like the main male character and the romance at all and wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue reading it, I did think that it was really well written, and that's actually really saved the book for me, I think, because it's written in a way that makes me want to continue reading and makes me want to know what's going to happen next. So yeah, I am actually really enjoying it, and I was reading it thinking, oh my god, I want to know what happens next, I want to know what happens next. No, wait, I need to go to bed. So that's where I'm at with it, and I think I'm probably going to finish it today because it's literally just 100 pages left. Today's Friday as well, and since I went out yesterday, I'm not going out today again, so I'm gonna have plenty of time to read and finish this book. But yeah, I will let you guys know when I'm finished with it, and then I'll have to read the next book. I have just finished reading A Rogue by Any Other Name, and as you can probably tell by my face right now, I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I just closed the book and then ran off taking the camera thinking I need to talk about it because I really actually fucking enjoyed this book, and I did not expect to finish this one with that sentiment, considering the beginning of it and how I felt about it at first. Basically, I really loved how the character of Penelope evolved throughout the book, and towards the end, how feisty and intelligent and powerful she had become. I feel like the proper word here is powerful. I still didn't love the more sexy passages, like they just did nothing for me. Those scenes didn't do it for me and just weren't exciting like they were meant to be, and I was more there for the story. Like, I really kept on reading, I got really into the story about halfway through, and that's when I really realized I was there for the plot and the character development and everything else, which is interesting because a lot of the time people might say about romances and historical romances and books like that are a little bit more smutty that they lack substance and that they're more there for the smut than anything else. And it just felt like literally the opposite with this book. Like, I just loved everything else about it. My conclusion from this book, just like the first one that I read, The Wallflower Wager, it really made me want to read the next books in the series. Although The Wallflower Wager was book number 3 in the series, so I wanted to read the first 2 books, but this one is the first book in this series, so I just want to read the next one because I know it's going to talk about one of the sisters of Penelope, of the main character, Philippa, also nicknamed Pippa, and she arrives at the very end to talk to one of the characters in the book in a way that sets up what's gonna happen in the next one. This is already 13 minutes long and it's meant to just be a short conclusion, so I'm gonna stop rambling here. The next book is This Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. So I've just received this a couple of days ago and it is tiny. It's so cute. I don't know why, I really love the format. Look at the difference between the 2 books. That's so much smaller. I didn't expect it to be this small. I don't think I own any books that are this small and cute and adorable, and it really fits this pocketbook size that French books do a lot, and I've not seen many other types of books do that. But it is American because the prices are in dollars, while this one was from an English edition of the book, which is why the cover is so much less scandalous and luxurious and all that than the really cool 90s vibes historical romance covers that we get from the Goodreads. Wherever I see these books and I'm just like, I want that cover, I want the cool one where the guy is half naked on it and she's wearing a luxurious red dress or something. I wish I had these covers, but I don't. Except for this one. This is actually one of those. So the summary for this one is that basically, so the main character is called Georgiana Cavaseed. She is a shipping heiress, so I guess that means that she's an heiress of a big shipping business, I imagine. I don't know much else about it. She's basically really done with the falsehoods and everything about marriage within the ton. And the one way that she can think of basically buying her own freedom and being able to live her life as she sees fit and not have to be married to some boring guy or some gross guy or some guy who's just after her fortune or whatever. The only way she can think of getting rid of that and being able to buy her own freedom is by going to a prison and asking for one of the guys that's on death row and saying she's gonna marry him so that she can become a widow. So that's exactly what she does. Except that the guy that she picks, who is meant to be on death row, is actually an undercover cop type of guy. I've not started it yet. It is 325 pages long, but it is written like quite tight and like the margins are very small, so we'll see. But I'm very excited to start this one and to finish this little series because this is the last book that I will read for it. And then obviously if I fancy to read more historical fiction, as I've said already based off the 2 last books that I picked up, I probably will, but they will not be part of this little vlog series. That's all I have for tonight. I'm gonna make myself some dinner and maybe start this one and probably read it during the weekend, and we'll let you know how it goes. Bye! Moisturize me. Okay, so I have finally given a head start to This Earl of Mine, which is a Bow Street bachelor's novel by Kate Bateman, and I've read about 158 pages. I can't believe I stopped there because I literally had one more page to finish this chapter. But anyway, so I'm reading it on my phone currently because I have the Kindle app on my phone, and when I'm traveling, which is the case right now, it's so much easier than to have to carry a bunch of books with me. So this book tells the story of, what's her name? Georgiana. So this book tells the story of Georgiana Cavaseed. She is an heiress because although she doesn't, I think, have a title, she's just really, really rich. She inherited her father's shipping business, and basically he taught her to manage the business on her own, and so she's really, really good at actually managing the business herself. And her father died at sea since then, so she's been the sole, she's actually the one managing the business with the help, I think, of one other person who was managing the finances behind it, but as soon as she hit her majority, which at the time is 25, it all belongs to her. So she comes with a pretty big dowry or package or whatever for all the gentlemen, bachelors around her, whatever, all the lords who are very poor but have a title. So the idea is that a lot of them have proposed in the past and that she's already a little bit older. This follows a really similar pattern to the other 2 books I've read so far in the series, where the female character is a little bit older and she's considered a spinster, but she has a great dowry, and she's like, no one wants to marry me for me, they just want to marry me for my money. And so she doesn't actually accept any of the proposals, because what her father had told her to do and what she's continued doing during all those proposals is saying, okay, if you want to marry me, you have to sign this paper that says you accept not to touch like a dime of my money, and you will get like a monthly allowance or whatever, but the whole business and the money that's behind it is mine. The reason why being that she's actually managing it and she's doubled her profits or something, so she's a very smart woman, and she's worried that if she marries anyone, they'll just gamble it away, drink it away, whatever lords are doing at the time. At the very beginning, she's trying to get married to some convict, because this is exactly what's happening with her cousin Josiah, who is after her money and has been trying to force himself a little bit on her and force a kiss here and there, which she absolutely has she doesn't want that at all, because he's realized that she doesn't want to marry him. She knows that he's just after her money, so the only way he's going to make it happen is by doing this whole thing, which at the time was like pretending like he ruined the woman, or actually ruining the woman, which means she then has no other choice but to marry the guy. And that's exactly what happened in the previous book actually. She goes down to Newgate Prison and decides to marry a convict who is going to get hanged literally the day after, so that she can become a widow, say that she married some seaman who then got lost at sea and died or whatever, and that she's a widow, and a widow can do whatever she wants basically. So she's trying to buy her freedom. But what happens is they're out of future hanged men at the prison, because the one that she was going to get actually died, I think, prematurely during the night or something. And she has no other choice but to pick one of the other two guys there. I think one of them is actually already dead, so she only has one choice, which is this guy there, because he isn't gonna get hanged, but he's likely to spend the rest of his time on a prison ship or whatever, like getting shipped somewhere. And the idea is that those ships pretty much are just a death sentence, but a slower one. Like most of the convicts on those just die at sea while being transported. So that's what she's planning to do, is just marry this guy and then be like, okay, fine, it'll just take longer, but I'll eventually be a widow, and then that's fine. Except that he's actually undercover, and he's actually a lord. Well, he's not a lord, but he's the brother of a lord, so he's like the spare son or whatever. So he's in that society as well, he's part of the ton. And when she marries him, she obviously is immediately attracted to him and vice versa. But what happens is that she doesn't know that he's a lord or anything, and she just leaves thinking, okay, cool, like I've got myself a husband now, and he's probably just gonna go at sea on some adventure and die early anyway, because he's a ruffian, and that's what they do. They just put themselves in danger and then die early. So she's not too worried until he arrives at a party where she's at and goes like, hey, wife, it's me, Ben Wild, because that's his name, it's Ben or Benedict Wild. And she's like in shock and immediately wants to cut off all ties with him. But then they decide to come up with a plan, which is that he's gonna pretend to seduce her and be after her dowry, because that's what most guys are after anyway, and that she's gonna pretend to fall head over heels for him, and that they're gonna get officially married, because they realize they can't get an annulment because none of the conditions are there, and they can't get a divorce because that would be a big scandal for her, and it would stop her sister from getting a good marriage as well. I've read quite a lot already and I'm really enjoying it so far. I love both characters. I think that the main guy, Ben Wild, is actually really fun to read from his point of view, because he's got so much more depth than the other guys before. Well, actually, I'd say the one in the previous book that I read, he had a lot of depth, but in an annoying way. Like, I hated his backstory. Well, this time it's just more interesting to me, the fact that he fought at war, and he's also, similarly to the previous guy, he owns like a gambling hell place with two of his friends, and they're both the other two friends, they're both spare sons as well, so they're kind of like, we have to work for our money because everything is going to the lord of the family, which is the older brother. I quite like his character, and I really like how much he's already pining after Georgiana. It's just really cute, and nothing so far has happened that's very smutty. There's not a lot of like, you can see there's a lot of build-up, which is what I was liking in the previous book. I'm really enjoying the fact that there's so much build-up. I know there's going to be some sex scenes at some point, but we're not there yet, and we're already halfway through the book. And they've had like a heated kiss at some point, and that's about it. And I'm really just enjoying the fact that it's not in a rush. There's just loads of build-up, and that's really much better for me and much more to my liking. There's a couple of adventures happening, which is also adding a bit of spice, and it's not just boring ballroom dancings and that's it. They're actually going on one, trying to solve the mystery of his mission together, and he's letting her help, and it's really cool because she's got a lot of knowledge about boats and stuff, and there's something about plans to create a submarine type of shit, and she's actually able to really be useful in it, and I'm really enjoying that, and can't wait to read the rest of the book, and I think it's going to be quite a fast read. So that's it for now. I'll catch up with you guys once I've reached, I don't know, 100 pages from the end or 50 pages from the end or something. Tell you my thoughts then. I have now finished this Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. So I really enjoyed this one actually. I partially liked the ending and the fact that it was super action-packed. Like, so many things happened towards the end, and I really enjoyed that because I didn't really get that in the other historical romances that I read so far. So this third one just really gave me that action aspect that the other ones really didn't. I have to say, I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I would say it's more like 3.5/4 stars for me. It wasn't as great, I think, as the first one. I think I enjoyed the first one more of the 3 historical romances I read, but I wasn't frustrated by the main character and the male character as much as I was in the second book that I read. So I do feel like out of the 3, weirdly, the one that I gave it the least stars is the second one, and yet I think it was the one that was the best written because it had the most character development and it felt like it was the most complex out of the 3. Although it was really fun, really fast-paced, and just overall a great read that I greatly enjoyed, it lacked a little bit in the romance aspect, I think. They were really cute together and they made such a cute couple, but I didn't feel that much chemistry in terms of the sexy scenes, and the part that you're meant to want to skip to get to were actually the parts that I wanted to skip through. First of all, he speaks a lot during it, and you know, there's a lot of him teasing her in a way that just didn't do it for me and kind of ruined the moment. I was like, stop talking so much. Why are you talking so much? We need more action and more stuff happening than you chatting about it. It was just really annoying and taking me out of the scene every single time. And then, I don't know, the descriptions of it were fine. It just, you want more than fine when you're reading these kinds of scenes, and it just, I was kind of reading them in a very sciencey way. Like, it just felt very description based, and okay, and then he does this, and then he takes off her skirt, and it just didn't give me any of the butterflies or anything at all, anything, you know, feelings based. It's really good, but it just felt a little bit bland, and I think that's why it just didn't deserve those 5 stars for me. But other than that, I did enjoy this, and I just liked this little experience. So, to conclude, I think I really enjoy historical romances. I think that's my conclusion of this video, is just to say that at the end of the day, a lot of these books made me want to read more, especially the ones that were part of a series. It made me want to discover more about the other couples referenced in the series, or know what was going to happen next, if there was a beginning of a hint of a couple happening and I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. Perhaps less so with this one, which is the Bow Street Bachelors. I think that it's meant to be a setup for the 2 best friends of Ben Wild, Alex and Seb, who are like him, second sons, and I think the idea is that the other books are going to be about their relationships, and that's fine, but we barely saw them in the book. They barely said anything, and so I wasn't partially looking forward for the next books. I didn't really care. It just really felt more like a standalone, this one, than the other 2. Apart from that, I'd say it was a really fun experience because they're all such fun and fast-paced reads that I managed to, you know, do all this in a little bit over a week, I think. I think that's quite a feat for me, considering I was in the middle of a huge reading slump earlier this year, and the reason I started this channel was kind of to get out of one. So I'm just really happy with the outcome of this experience, and I think that's about it, guys. So I will see you in my next video. If you like this video, please leave a like or a comment down below, and please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy that kind of content, because I will try and post more of it. Bye!